Hi, everybody. Welcome to Upcycling and Food Service, enabling access to nutrition for all. We're delighted to be here. My name is Dr. Lara Ramdin. I'm a UFA Emeritus Board member. I've been working in innovation for over 20 years and working in upcycling for about 7 of those years, actually. So I'm delighted to be here with my crew, with my gang of fellow upcyclers, the celebrities of the upcycling world here, who are going to talk to you about why we really feel strongly that upcycling is important for the future of food systems. We don't believe it's the only enabler to secure security of supply when it comes to food, but we do think it's an important enabler. And we're delighted to be able to share what we think with you today so that you can go back to your roles and your jobs and think more about how you can incorporate upcycling into what you do on an everyday basis. So first slide, please, Patrick. So just to give you a background on who I am, I have, as I said, I've been working in innovation for over 20 years. I have worked in beauty, in consumer goods products. I have worked for upcycling companies, and I come to food system design and sustainability, having worked in reduction of food waste and upcycling over the last 7 years, and also in my previous role at Dole, working on how to tackle food deserts. And I guess the thing that keeps me up at night is how are you going to ensure that everybody gets fed? I come from an Irish mother and an American father, and so I come from 2 feeders, and so they've passed that down to me, and now I spend most of my life thinking about how I'm going to feed people. And really, upcycling for me is an enabler to ensuring that security of supply, and it's about rescuing nutrition and putting that back into food products so that we can create a more democratic food system and enable nutrition for all. So that's about me. I'm going to moderate the conversation. On to our celebrities. Next slide, please. Over to you, Amanda.
Sounds good. Well, thank you, Dr. Lara, and it's so good to be here with you all. My name is Amanda Owenbring. I'm the CEO of Upcycled Food Association, and we are a membership-based trade association, 5 years young as of this week exactly, and so delighted that we have my colleagues on the panel here because they have been the ones that have really been creating the momentum behind this movement. So to get started, what exactly is upcycled food? When UFA got started 5 years ago, it was really aligning around the definition you see here on screen with a wide variety of stakeholders and really committing to 3 pillars. So upcycled foods using ingredients that otherwise would have not gone to human consumption. So making sure we are putting food to its highest and best use, making sure upcycled foods are procured and produced using verifiable supply chains, and they have a positive impact on the environment. Next slide, please. So to give you a taste of the wide variety of members of UFA, we work with over 200 members globally, all across the supply chain, whether they have an upcycled product yet or not. And it's a really beautiful spectrum in terms of the research and innovation, the infrastructure and equipment to transform these upcycled products and ingredients to the ingredients themselves that are being made into food products from companies both small and large. And then really delighted to have such a strong research and academic focus within the network, which Dr. Lara has been a champion of within her work at UFA. So I wanted to give you just a taste of some of the types of members you'll find when you venture into the world of upcycledfood.org, and specifically highlight one of our members that is really beautifully applicable to food service, Matriarch Foods. So you'll see here on screen one of her products. She and her team creates a line from soups to sauces to broths, and really see what she's rescuing through surplus being applicable to both food service, but even beyond that, being available now on the Feeding America national marketplace and being applicable to disaster relief. So really wanted to celebrate this whole wide audience and to, really celebrate what she is doing and taking it to a wide spectrum of where food is consumed and celebrated every day. So really want to welcome you into the world of upcycled foods, and I'll pass it over.
Next slide, please, Patrick. Adam, over to you.
You're muted, Adam.
I think I'm on mute, Adam.
Right, there you go. It's Friday afternoon. Anyway, thank you all, and thank you, Dr. Lara, for inviting me to be a part of this incredibly distinguished panel. I feel like I am among celebrities here in the world of upcycling and people that I look up to very much. I am the co-founder and chief culinary officer of the Spare Food Co. We're based in New York. We're an upcycled food innovation platform that uses 40% of the overlooked and unused ingredients in our food system to create foods and drinks that are better for people and the planet. A little bit about myself. I'm a chef by training. I spent 25 plus years working in fine dining restaurants, actually, and it was through that experience that I became particularly interested in this issue of waste in our food system. Joined forces with my brother, my business partner. It's a very different background, really coming out of the world of business, but really business as a force for good. He spent early part of his career at Patagonia, and it's our combined experiences that really create the special upcycled sauce that is the Spare Food Co. I will speak a little bit more about our products, or at least one of our products, a little later on. But again, the basic premise of our company is to identify ingredients at scale in our food system, latent value. How do we capture that at scale? And then using my lens as a chef, how do we create food and beverages and put those ingredient streams right back into the food system as food for people first and foremost? So it is, in practice, exactly what Amanda has just been describing as the concept of upcycling.
Next slide, please, Patrick. Angie, over to you.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm so grateful. Thank you, Dr. Lara, and to be on the same stage as Amanda and Adam again is incredible, and to be able to talk to food rescue organizations, which you all have such an important role to play in our food system being more equitable and more sustainable. And I'm so excited to introduce a new project of mine called Impact on Purpose Consulting, and actually want to bring in something that was said in the last panel around food justice. Vanessa from Refed said, food is one of the most intimate investments that we make in our society. And I think that is like such an important through line as we continue this conversation, and something that I have really wanted to bring more into my work. And so Impact on Purpose Consulting is really an effort to sort of combine my 15 years of experience in along with my roots of growing up on a family farm, and helping businesses, helping nonprofits, helping funders bring more intentionality and purpose into how we are transforming our food system. And I think Vanessa's words are going to ring in my ears as I continue down this line. And part of that experience includes, I've worked in various facets of the food industry. So restaurants, I've seen the waste happen. I've worked in food distribution with mission-driven businesses. I've helped design social impact programs and have helped to grow sort of movement building certification schemes, including the Upcycle Certified program. And so I'm excited to sort of bring this additional expertise into supporting more businesses so we can really accelerate our work to the urgency that it deserves. Next slide, please.
There's somebody that needs to go on mute, I think, in the backstage area, possibly. Thank you. There's some interference, but thank you.
Great. And of course, upcycling is one of those ways. I really look at upcycling as a way to generate returns on your mission, regardless of what type of organization that you are. So whether you're a food service, nonprofit, for-profit, funder. And when I approach this in my work, I'm looking at it through the lens of innovation. How can we create new streams of capital? And looking at that from social capital, human capital, financial capital, as well as optimizing all of those new streams. So how do we put all of our resources to their highest and best use, and then using that to really mobilize and engage others around sort of that intrinsic motivation that food brings out in all of us. And so it's just such an exciting opportunity to be able to talk about that in the context of food service today. And I'm looking forward to, sharing more thoughts and hearing your questions about how we can do that together.
Thank you so much, Angie. Patrick, if we could go back to the title slide, please. We'll go to action steps at the end. Thank you very much. I'm going to get into a conversation now with these guys. And whilst we're talking, we would really appreciate audience questions. We've got about 10 minutes at the end where we can do some Q&A. So feel free, if you're feeling inspired, to put your questions in the chat. If you guys have had a presentation from Vanessa at ReFed, then you're all aware, frankly, that food waste is the dumbest problem that we have. I mean, there are a few dumb problems I could think of right now at the top of my head, but food waste is definitely one of them. And you'll know that obviously 38% of all the food made is wasted, which for all of you who work in food rescue must seem incredibly criminal, because it equates to about 147 billion meals worth of food that gets wasted every year. I mean, that's why we do what we do. But obviously, there are still some challenges with trying to reduce food waste, trying to work in upcycling, trying to communicate to people that upcycling is positive for them and for the planet. And in particular, and in food service, I've assembled this stellar group of people because I want to talk particularly about food service and how we think we should tackle it in food service. So starting with you, Adam, what are some of the key things that you've learned about talking to chefs and customers about upcycling, or do you even talk about it? And do you talk about the source of ingredients, and do you talk about waste reduction? How have you done that within your culinary sphere?
Yeah, thank you. The reason that I'm drawn to this panel and this topic in general is because I truly believe that, firstly, as a chef, talking about other chefs, I feel like chefs in the food service world are the unsung heroes of the culinary world, certainly in terms of their ability to affect change at scale and the number of people that they touch through their work on a daily basis, both directly and then indirectly, both upstream and downstream. A lot of our work initially, before we got into the product development world, was specifically working with food service companies to better understand how they could be reducing waste in their own operations, looking at everything from purchasing to organizational strategies to basic culinary techniques to reduce waste in their operations. Obviously, all of these large-scale food service companies, whether K through 12 to higher ed to corporate dining, healthcare, you name it, are all battling this issue. I think what's unique about where I'm coming from as a chef is that, and I think this is what resonates with people in the food service industry, and certainly on the culinary side, is that, we're using the term upcycling. No offense to my colleagues from the Upcycled Food Institute, all three of you, but that's a relatively new term for a very old idea, and that idea is called cooking. And it is as old as food consumption and preparation and eating. And so my belief is, and obviously I have a vested interest as a chef to believe this, that who better to be talking about this issue and creating awareness about this issue than people in the culinary world, and specifically in the food service culinary world, where they are feeding as many people. So again, I think that taking that approach specifically through food service is incredibly powerful. And in my experience, there's been an incredibly receptive audience amongst the culinary professionals that I've worked with around this issue. And I think part of it is being able to tap into their skill set and realize that as people in the food service world, we have a very functional toolbox of skills that can actually make some pretty massive impact in the world around us in as you say, this incredibly dumb problem. So it is a slightly unique perspective, but something that I've found certainly has worked to our advantage, working specifically in food service. And increasingly, that is where our focus is as a company, as an upcycled food company, is specifically dealing with the food service industry.
Great. So then, Angie, given that you've worked for Fairtrade, so you've worked in other parts of food systems, right? You've worked in Fairtrade, you've worked for Numiti, which prides itself on all the different certifications and stamps. That's part of their brand philosophy, right? They've got like, I don't know, 15 different certifications, and also you're working upcycling. What Adam says completely resonates. And if you're a chef, then yeah, it's an old problem, a new name for an old problem. Like if you're a chef and you're trained to cook, then I think using leftovers or making delicious meals from leftovers is as old as time. Right. But how do you translate that and all the learnings that they've made there into what happens in business and how you communicate with people in business? I think that's where we see a gap, right? And that's where we need more work, I think. No?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it comes to, businesses, all kinds of businesses, all types of organizations, so nonprofits included, are under more and more pressure to provide quantifiable data to prove their impact, to prove how their dollars are being leveraged to create value for their stakeholders. In upcycling in particular, I think you have a large number of metrics to point to. You can talk about the total pounds of food that you have diverted into a new product or rescued. You can look at the nutrient density of that food and report out on the qualities, the functional benefits. Are these immunity producing nutrients that you can celebrate and sell into a business? But also then breaking down what are the resources that went into that food that you are now conserving and ensuring that it was valued. So your water consumption, land use, carbon intensity, and then bringing it to the social. So how many people can you feed with that food? How many jobs can you create, both directly and indirectly, through those advanced partnerships that will require. And then I think the other is like this social capital that you bring, that power of networking to disrupt what we are like fragmented, somewhat dysfunctional, but highly efficient systems. That has, broad economic returns in your community. And so I think bringing all of this into why upcycling might make sense for a business is really important to build those partnerships. And I think, in the context of food rescue, you may not have the capacity to do value-added processing for wasted food or, food that you're not able to distribute. Perhaps there's a partner in your community that these values would resonate with them and their stakeholders. And you can form sort of this disruptive partnership to save more food from waste and feed more people. But I think at the end of the day, I'm always going to talk about returns on the mission. So what's your mission? How are you creating financial returns through new revenue streams, either from byproducts or optimizing the resources that you have? How are you developing that human capital, those personal connections, and really elevating like personal motivation in your organization? I think intellectual capital, a lot of upcycling is about sort of these new ways to think about food or taking old ways of processing into new forms of communication. And so really accelerating creativity. And then again, social, disrupt the transactional nature of some businesses to build a more collective good.
Excellent. And then Amanda, what do you see the role of UFA in all of this conversation, right? It's an industry association. We all belong to it. We're all part of it. Some of us are board members or, emeritus board members. For the purpose of this audience, what's the role of the UFA?
Yeah, thank you for bringing that in, and I definitely resonate with what Adam and Angie have both said in that, right? In these moments of creating disruptive change, those grow out of community. And that's really where I see the role of the UFA in our first 5 years, and our role going forward is really, creating and weaving together those trusted relationships, collaborations, partnerships that help unlock change at scale. And that's where I really think food service has a unique role to play. To bring in the voice of Anna Hammond, who we just looked at a moment ago with Matriarch Foods. Food service is where over 50% of meals are eaten in the United States. So those small changes in food service having enormous impact. So thinking about, what are the ways that UFA is helping make accessible and known and visible the players across our community that are providing the upcycled ingredient or providing the path for change in these places where we eat so much of our food every day, the college campuses, whether it be across our education settings and even municipal decision makers, right? I was with a conversation of stakeholders across the state of Maryland brainstorming this week, thinking about how do we get more upcycling from our agricultural streams and to our corrections departments, and right, everything from craft makers to every citizen of a community has a way that they can interface with upcycling. And that's where the joy of the community of UFA and really that heartbeat of carrying that forward, both the message and the actual delicious, exciting nutrition that all our members are helping to rescue.
Excellent. So building on that, Adam, I want to ask you specifically about your expertise as a chef. So talking to all those people who are chefs or making food or cooking food that are in this audience, how do they tackle sourcing upcycled ingredients, making food with upcycled ingredients? I mean, I'm sure you and your colleagues consider your the cooking to be your art and your mastery, and that's something that's central to the Spare Food Company, right? So what would be your advice to anybody in the audience who's thinking about, well, I've just never used upcycled ingredients before?
I will remember to do that first time round by the very last question that comes my way. Yeah, I think perhaps what I'll do is answer your question with a description of one of our products, which I think is telling in terms of how we can infiltrate the food service world using upcycled products, how to get these products to become more mainstream. Our main product that we produce is called Spare Starter. It is a blend of surplus veggies. So we're going all the way upstream to farms. We're capturing the surplus. It comes in a 2-gallon pail. It's created specifically for food service chefs. It's a meal starter. It can go into anything from a soup to a chili to meatloaf, however you want to use it. For chefs in food service, firstly, there's really nothing like it out there. It's not a stock. It's not a puree. It's a very unique product, sort of chef created, that other chefs immediately get. But for chefs, it's really checking off a lot of different boxes. Oh, and it's upcycled too, right? So it is a labor-saving ingredient. So, we've taken all of that chopping and dicing out of the kitchen, and in a world that is really strapped for labor, the food service industry, it is a major saving. We've done a lot of research that the product itself also reduces waste in the kitchen, because we've taken all of that chopping and dicing and we've included that in the processing. That is no longer being generated in the kitchen. So that one, the 2-gallon, 18-pound pail basically is saving about 10 to 13 pounds of trim in the kitchen, right? There's that aspect. There's a way to get more veggies into menus, more nutrition. What we're doing when we're capturing these surplus ingredients and utilizing them is from a culinary perspective, it just sort of opens up this incredible palette of additional ingredients that we get to use, right? And it is something that as a chef is very exciting and very empowering, right? The fact that you can still contribute these incredible flavors and textures from ingredients that would otherwise be wasted. So from a chef's perspective, it just makes sense. It makes sense on a lot of different levels, and it really is just about seeking out these products. Amanda spoke about Matriarch and their products. These products, and again, very much through the work of the UFA, are starting to become quite mainstream out there. You can find these products on major distribution, broadline distribution networks, the Cisco's or US Foods of the world that are now starting to carry these. So it becomes building awareness, thank you to the UFA, and then allowing these chefs, giving them the opportunity to see how these products can actually very seamlessly fit into their system that they're currently working in.
I think they are becoming more mainstream, but you've highlighted a couple of challenges, which I want to bring Angie and Amanda into. So the first challenge, and I think we all have to accept that, and I don't know how chefs feel about it, but certainly in the businesses that I've worked in, it's been a consumer goods companies a lot. If you're developing an upcycled consumer good or an upcycled ingredient or an upcycled product for food service, because there's some processing needed and because there's some labor needed in order to create those things, often in comparison to the standard version of that, it's a little bit more expensive. So the business case can be a challenge, right, Angie? And that's a challenge that we talk about a lot in upcycle businesses and also within the UFA, right, Amanda? We talk about how we're all commercial, but maybe we're not at scale. And what we need is an acceleration of scale. And then the second thing, of course, is if you are in the consumer goods area, when it's talking to whether it's talking to retailers or then talking to consumers, there's still a gap in our understanding of what's the best way to communicate the reutilization of waste in a ever evolving positive way. So I think we have to be honest about the fact that this is an emerging category within food systems that we believe in. We believe it's an important tool, but it still has more work to do in order to become fully mainstream. So what are your thoughts on that, Angie? And then I'll come to you, Amanda.
Yeah, it's indeed a challenge. And I think anytime you're disrupting a system, initially you're going to face a lot of additional increased cost until that becomes more mainstream and more people are talking about it. I think, and given the context of this conversation around food service, I do think this is an efficient entry point for some of this disruption. Recently, I've been working with a nonprofit that's focused on revolutionizing school food through their programming. And if you think about school food in the US, that's 350,000 food service workers creating 2 meals, breakfast and lunch, every single day for about 30 million students. And so when you think about an opportunity to impact a system at scale, these partnerships are really critical. And that can help bring down cost faster, and it can get a wider, a broader set of stakeholders involved in the funding. So now you have donors that are involved, you have school food funders that are involved, you have environmental funders that are involved. And so thinking of it from that perspective, I think there's a lot of opportunity to bring down costs faster when we think also, same way we're thinking efficiently about our food inputs, thinking efficiently about how we tackle our partnerships. And how we bring these big food service institutions into the fold.
And so, Amanda, what do you see in your role as the CEO of the UFA? What do you see evolving, and what are the things that you see as positive momentum, and where do you see where we still have challenges?
Yeah, I think it's a really fascinating time because, the core of UFA and UFA members is innovation. So really seeing where they're taking this challenge, turning it into an opportunity, taking cost centers, turning them into revenue streams. And I really think, especially for this audience, thinking about where we are already experiencing and are only going to keep experiencing constraints across the food supply chain as climate change is here and is a daily reality. So really looking to those members that are seeing that future and creating the products for that future now. So the cocoa-free chocolates and the bean-free coffee, right? Thinking about those swaps, especially when, you're creating those school meals, those nut-free spreads that can come in and really be transforming, whether it's a product that we all know and love and might consume every day, or if it's those, 10% of a formulation change, what can that really be creating ripples of difference at scale? And I think that's really how we'll, in the beautiful ways that Spare Food Co. is already creating, taking that burger that, might not be the person that would choose a full veggie burger, but they're going to choose that blended burger, and kind of taking that message to whole new audiences, and especially those younger generations who are looking for the ways to take action through their decisions and through their purchasing. I think we're only going to continue to see those ripples turn into waves over time.
Okay, could I just add, sorry,
sure.
Lara, could I just add one thing, and it's something that both Angie and Amanda touched on, is, we started off our company with a retail product, and we have made a decision a little while ago to push pause on that retail product, specifically to focus on food service. And I just think the barrier for entry through food service is far lower, especially with a new concept like upcycling. You've got to convince one chef or one culinary director rather than a supermarket full of shoppers, right? And what both Angie and Amanda have touched on is the impact that has in terms of educational opportunities to be able to sort of prime the pump for these products in the retail world as well. So it just really starts to sort of has this flywheel effect that really starts to grow. But again, I think that the real lesson from all of this, and certainly what we're seeing, is food service as that point of entry is a very, very effective way to create the disruption that Angie is talking about.
Well, let me ask you something to all of you. We're here because we believe that food waste is a stupid problem and we can do something to solve it, not least because of its impact on greenhouse gas emissions, but also all of us feel passionately about not wasting food. Consumers don't really care about the climate when they're buying their food, right? Or when they're choosing their food in a restaurant. If you think about why we're here, this is nutrition for all, so democratic food access, right? So I'm not talking about posh restaurants like per se at Columbus Circle or whatever. I'm talking about, your average food service, your average fast food service, your average diner, your average, accessibly priced restaurant, and, your average consumer goods, your average snack, your average bread, your average beverage, whatever it is. And when they're buying that or when they're consuming that in a restaurant, climate is not top of mind, right? Especially now when, everybody's concerned about how much money is in their purse or their wallet and how far that will go, right? So we're all clued into it and we all care about it and we all want to do something about it. But our businesses and our community only survives if people are buying into that. And I posit to all of you that actually climate change, whilst people say they're emotionally invested and care about it, tangibly, when I'm faced with a decision, I think price and taste comes before that. What do you think? Who wants to go first?
I have so much to say about it. Yeah, I agree. A lot of the recent research too, on particularly in a food service setting, when you look at menus, what drives purchase decisions is actually climate and like community-based impact actually perform lower than claims around the functional benefits of a food. How is it going to make you feel is really important. And I think getting back to this notion, it's a very intimate thing that you're doing. You're putting something inside of your body, you're eating something. So letting people know why it's good for you, what it it's doing for you, but then also where it comes from. So we know that transparency is still important, and that can relate to either a clean label or the origin of the food itself. And I think that is where the storytelling, particularly around upcycling, can be really powerful. So this, what the farmer couldn't sell this, but and it came from a farm in your backyard, and now you're eating it and you're going to feel uplifted and rejuvenated because it has inflammatory properties and it's also, locally sourced. Those things can perform better than going straight to climate, which does create a sense, I think, of disenfranchisement. And it's also not like an immediate need. Like if you're hungry, your immediate need is to feed yourself with something that's delicious and nurturing. So I think keeping that in mind and using your menus as a path for that information, but also using your chefs, the servers within a food service environment, the makers of these products in the kitchen, using them as conduits for that inspiration as well, and really inspiring them to tell those stories can be really powerful ways to educate and motivate purchasers for upcycled foods.
Amanda, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, it really comes back to trust and transparency, right? And that is what, our core at UFA has really grown from. I think, back to when we got started, it was developing the standard that became upcycled certified. So that mark you see out on store shelves of, purchasers really looking for, both the source of where food is coming from and, making sure when they're making that purchase that there is something behind that. So, we've seen that, in the last 10, 15 years with the growth of non-GMO, the growth of organic, right? When those were just emerging out onto the marketplace, and now they're more diffuse everywhere we look. So I really think, coming back to leading with, especially for younger generations, it's the taste. You got to lead with that delicious experience. It's the excitement around the innovation and the value, right? What is this creating in the world that otherwise would have not been put to its highest and best use? So I think really blending those messages is what UFA members across the spectrum are doing in really interesting ways. But Adam, love to hear what you'd add.
Yeah, I'm just going to state the obvious. It's got to taste good. And that's what we found, especially interacting with diners in food service situations. And that hierarchy of messaging in a world where there's just sort of so much overload of information. It's almost like, okay, this is delicious. It's really good for you. Oh, and it happens to also be climate friendly, right? But you could have the greatest story in the world, and if the food isn't delicious and makes people want to come back, you've failed before you've even started. And I think we could all agree with that. And we're all in the business of a particular story here to tell. But we're not going to get anywhere without that food being delicious. And I also think but that is where, when done right, that's where we have an incredibly powerful opportunity here, because, for those of us who are fortunate enough to choose what we get to eat each day, and I want to be very clear that, to qualify that, because not everyone does get to make that choice, right?
Right.
But for those of us who are able to choose, we have incredible power, and food is one of those few things that we have some sort of agency over, and in a world that is increasingly sort of spiraling out of control, that counts for something, but it's got to taste good.
I think the concern that I have, and we've got a couple of questions and I'll come on to them in a second. The concern that I have is that there still seems to be a gap for me in the understanding that all of these things that we're doing, whether that be upcycling, alternative protein, cultivated meat, regenerative agriculture, all the different tools that are happening within food systems, we need all of them in order to secure the security of supply. And I'm not sure, and that might seem nebulous to everybody, but actually to those of us here, it's very, very obvious. And I think my concern is that if we don't all work together and we don't continue to communicate together and hold hands, is that the disparity between food access and not having access is going to get greater. And I am not here to work in a food system that only makes food for people who can afford it. I don't think any of us are motivated. I don't believe any of us are motivated by that. I think we're all motivated by, we all believe that access to food is a human right, right? And that we want it to be more available to more people. And certainly this audience, this 412 Food Rescue Conference, the people that are listening to us are dedicating their lives to making sure that people get fed and taking food and redistributing it and making sure that it's available. So I sometimes wonder whether or not we're in an echo chamber talking to ourselves a little bit. And I say that with the greatest respect for all of you, but I'm also trying to check myself, right? Because I don't think if you're just a normal shopper in Walmart and Target, you care about really where your food comes from or where it goes to. And I don't think more people need to care. I've shut you all up now. You're like, what do we say to that? It's an ongoing issue. I think we need to make sure, I think it's difficult to make that transparent to people, right? 60 years of topsoil left, too many animals. We need plant forward diets. There's a whole bunch of things that we need to communicate on, right? And upcycling is just one part of that.
It's one tool in the tool belt, right? And that is where we're working together. Yeah, making sure we're not duplicating efforts, making sure, we do not have time left. These solutions were needed yesterday. So how do we steward the time that we have left for ourselves, for our future of our planet and the future generations, right? That's what keeps me up at night, Lara, and that's what gets me up in the morning, right? And that's where I really think of and celebrate in those moments of kind of the bigger existential questions of the innovation infrastructure companies in our network who are, really taking the technology forward to be able to capture the moments of harvest surplus everyone in this line sees, flood in, right? When you have the excess apple crops that just get left in the field or go to compost, let's make sure we're capturing and preserving, rescuing that nutrition and having that be an input, because we create the nutrition that we need. It's just not getting in the right channels to the right mouths. And how can we be making change over time? And to make that change, we need everyone at the table doing it.
Everyone at the table, exactly. Okay, so we have a question, Angie, for you. It's about the work that you were mentioning with schools. I gave a talk once on upcycling to the Schools Nutrition Association, not last year, but the year before. And I was humbled by because that was a group of food service directors across all schools in the US. So it's like 700 food service directors. I was humbled with the challenges that they face in order to feed all the children that are going to school, and in terms of budget, and also fairly strict guidelines actually from the USDA. And their primary concern is basically just to get children fed, right, so that they can work and go to school and learn and what have you. So the idea that we might introduce upcycled ingredients, is that something that they're open to, or is it another layer of complexity that it's difficult for them to handle? And the question is really, the person wants to hear a bit more about the work that you're doing, and can you elaborate on it?
Yeah, so the work is really, I would say it's through an upcycling lens, but it's also through a broader food waste reduction lens. So really looking at how you can incentivize source reduction within the kitchen and in a cafeteria, but then also evaluating plate waste. So why aren't students eating something? And kids are great food reviewers. They will tell you if something sucks. And so you can make healthy swaps, sustainable swaps, but if they don't like the taste, it still ends up in the trash. And so I think that's just something to be mindful of too in upcycling. You might be saving food from waste, creating this value add product, but if it gets wasted at the end, then all of your additional effort was for nothing. So with schools in particular, there's they're incredibly resource constrained. And so they're really intentional about the types of product swaps that they're making underneath this umbrella of value-based purchasing. And when you think about value-based purchasing, that can look like local incentives to purchase, which the USDA has a lot of really great grant programs for. But it could also look like prioritizing products with sustainable claims. So third-party claims like regenerative ag, like Upcycle certified. So looking at where we can in their solicitation process to food suppliers, highlight, prioritize, and give, special priority for companies that are producing these products is really the primary lever in terms of purchasing. And that's in addition to other strategies like, let's make sure resources like before lunch, so kids are hungry and they're eating as much as they need to eat. Let's give more time for lunch so there's less waste. And then also let's provide schools better forecasting, tools and support around that. So it's both about source reduction, but then also about making these more sustainable swaps with their limited budgets and doing it in areas where the products are versatile. They can meet a wide range of student preferences, but they're also very nutrient dense.
So disguise everything as a tater tot is basically what you're saying, right?
Moving away from the tater tot. Yeah, but yes, kids love tater tots. I love tater tots.
I do too. Amanda, there was a question about whether or not food rescue kitchens could be part of the UFA. We are an inclusive society, are we not? We accept everyone, one and all, right?
A wide table, long table. And I also want to give a shout out to tater tots being the original upcycling. So let's just take a moment.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. That's an American invention I did not grow up with. So
yeah. So to answer the question, the tent at the table of UFA is inclusive of all types of businesses, organizations, including nonprofits. So want to give a shout out to one of our members in Maine, Food Fork Lab. Check them out at foodforklab.com. They are essentially an incubator based out of Maine that's, bringing in businesses, shared manufacturing, shared processing. That's a great model to look at. And then we have members, working to bring these, ideas into their own communities, including in Colorado as one example. And I'd actually bring Angie in. Angie, is any other from your recollection stories that you'd add to that in our shared brain?
Well, Food Shift also in the Bay Area. I know they were making some pup treats out of some of their surplus. You asked me too quickly.
We should also
visit the website and look at the members. There's so many.
We should also shout out it's Shugs in San Francisco, because that's the what's it called?
It's called Shuggy's Trash Pie. If you're looking for creative messaging, if you're a food service business and you're looking for fun, sort of modern messaging around upcycling and rescued food, I think they provide some really great ideas and sort of whimsical experiences around it.
And Shuggy's, if I'm correct in saying, is one of the OGs in food service, right? One of the OGs in the restaurant, although Adam will tell me all chefs use their leftovers and upcycle always, but she's one of the OGs, right? She's been around for a while, I think, doing her trash pie.
Yeah, they were on the original board of the founding of UFA.
Yes, so that's what I thought. That's what I thought. Patrick, could you just do the last slide with action steps then, and then we'll bring this home and close it out. Oh, I can't see that. Thank you. So we're just a few points to leave you guys with, and these will be very obvious, I think, after this conversation, and I will let the other panelists comment on this at the end. But obviously, if you can support acceleration of the upcycle category and also, diversion of pounds of food from landfill by sourcing upcycled ingredients whenever you can, we believe that they're delicious, of course. Everybody is committed to the fact that upcycled ingredients and products taste good, which is number one, but also it helps the environment, and as long as we get scale, there will be significant cost benefits. I think the education of staff and customers continues to evolve, and I think this is definitely something that the UFA in particular, and the UFF, I would say, which is what I'm part of, would love to be involved in as we move forward. So if you are part of an organization, or you're in or a crew that would like to collaborate on finding ways to communicate with your chefs and or your customers, we'd love to be part of that if we can. Adam, I think, illustrated very nicely about how to create upcycled menu items and talk about that on the menu. And I'm sure Adam won't mind you reaching out to him to talk about that more after this panel. I think it's very, very clear that the food system is incredibly complex, and nothing will happen if we don't collaborate more. And I have worked in innovation a long time, and the word collaboration gets overused, frankly. And collaboration, I mean in the truest sense, where there is an equal win-win for both parties, and where two parties come together with different skill sets that complement one another. So 2 and 2 makes 5. I can't say that's always happened in my career, but I think if we're really going to disrupt the food system, that's how we do it. And we continue to talk about the amount of pounds of food diverted from landfill. As we continue in this upcycled movement, we will get better on metrics, and hopefully we'll be able to start talking about reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. But for now, we would appreciate you joining us on this journey in the upcycle category. If I can get the panelists back for a second, Patrick, in the last minute, one last word to say, all of you. What would you like to leave us with?
Look for Upcycled Certified on your grocery store shelves and make that decision when you're able to. And I also would invite you, if you've sparked your curiosity today and you want to learn more, we've got another great panel Dr. Lara is actually leading, as well as a weekly series. So upcycledfood.org, check out our weekly webinar series, the Upswell.
Adam?
I would just say that, look, going back to the title of this panel, Upcycling in Food Service and Enabling Access to Nutrition for All, something that's come up a few times today is cost and making this accessible. And I think as a burgeoning industry, it's something we're all dealing with. I truly do believe that working through food service and the scale of food service will allow us to bring those costs down and then make these. I look forward to the day that Matriarch or Spare, all these products are just as accessible as anything else out there. We're not going to get there without scale, and food service, I think, is the conduit for that scale that will ultimately bring this to everyone.
And Angie.
Oh, last one, no pressure. I'm going to go a different route. Everything that Amanda and Adam said is very resonant, and you too, Dr. Lara. But also take care of yourself. I think to be able to do this sort of work and disrupt these systems. And I believe that this organization has a lot of caretakers who want to feed people, but I think it's also important to feed yourself and reach out for help and support. And just to plug, that's why part of the reason why I started Impact on Purpose. Impact on Purpose. So reach out if you do need that support, because I'm here to learn with you and help you along the way.
Well, that's it from us, folks. Thank you so very much for listening. We really, really appreciate you attending. We hope that we've inspired you to buy upcycled ingredients, buy upcycled certified products, and at the very least, use all your leftovers. Remember, waste is one of the dumbest problems that we have. Thank you very much.